Okay, it is going live. Hi, Sajid. So let me share the screen for our agenda. Here's my screen.
Yes, I can see your screen.
Okay, thanks. Okay. So today we have basically 3 topics. The first one is about the GitHub Actions. I also saw someone adding topics. The second one is to triage the 1.1 milestone. As you know that we aligned the priority for the key features we want to deliver, right? But still we have some issues that in the 1.1 milestone, some of them are left over from previous releases. So let's review those issues and make a decision whether we should include them in 1.1 or some items, some issues we may need to move to the next milestone. And then some updates on the KubeCon next week in China. I also saw someone add a new topic. Let me check. Okay, so we have 4 topics. So let's start from the top. So the first one, please, Feynman.
Yeah, thanks. So would you mind me to share my screen, or I can share the link that you open it here?
Yeah, if you want to share, no problem.
Yeah, let me try that.
If it is not convenient for you, you can just send me the link. I will open it. Maybe it will be efficient.
Let me try to share my screen. I will spend maybe 3 or 5 minutes to quickly go through the status and current experience of notation GitHub Actions and share the release timeline and the plan of the notation GitHub Actions and see any feedback from the community. Right? I will share my screen right now. Let me know if you can see my desktop.
No, but because I think Zoom can share 2 screens at the same time. So if you can just stop sharing so everyone can see Feynman's screen. Yeah, it's better.
Yeah.
I think now it works, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so actually we have created the notation action repo 2 or 3 months ago, right? So we have been invested a lot of resources to develop the notation GitHub Actions for CI/CD pipeline users. It helps users to automate the signing, verification, and also installation of notation. So currently we have 3 GitHub Actions which are available to use, even we don't have an available release cut yet. But right now you can test the notation GitHub Actions in your GitHub Actions workflow file. So next step would be we will cut the first release for GitHub Actions. So before we cutting the first release, I would like to share the current experience of notation GitHub Actions. I will be quickly share a pull request that refine the README. So it has some examples and suggested syntax for the workflow file. let me open that README file. I will quickly go through the experience which defined in the README. Okay, so as I mentioned earlier, notation GitHub Actions has 3 actions. So the setup action is used for install notation in GitHub Actions in CI/CD pipeline. So users just need to define the notation actions setup with the specific version, like V1, if we had that release. So users will be able to install notation without any further commands. So this is an example notation setup action. So we specified version 1.0 in the setup action. So another 2 actions are sign and verify. So, candidate notation requires an external plugin to sign the container images. So you have to specify an available plugins like the AWS Signer plugin, Azure Key Vault plugin, or HashiCorp Vault plugin. So currently we have 3 plugins which are available to use. But currently, due to the limited resources, we have only tested the notation GitHub Actions with the Azure Key Vault plugin. So you are also welcome to submit other test cases and examples for another 2 plugins. So here are the examples and use cases for notation sign and verify actions. So we also add examples under the notation sign and the verify section. So this is quite similar to how users are using the CLI commands like notation sign and verify. You just need to specify the plugin information, like where to download the plugin and where's your key ID. And you just need to specify the target signing, the signing target in this YAML file. Notation actions will take the automated steps for you to sign the container images and push the signed images with its associated signature to the target registry. You can also enable the refers API in the signing action. So the verify action is similar to the above. You just need to specify where your trust policy and trust store looks like, and you define the file paths in your verify actions. So it will read the files that you stored in the trust policy and trust store. So currently we use the GitHub repository as the place to store the trust policy file and also store the certificates. This is quite similar to how notation works in our virtual machines. So again, we only tested the notation signing with the Azure Key Vault plugin, but other plugins are available to use. And ideally, I think we should have test cases and examples for other plugins in the future. But we are looking forward to the communities to help us test and provide more examples for another 2 plugins. So this is the current status for notation GitHub Actions. If there are any ideas, suggestions, or questions, please feel free to open your hands. Oh, I see Samir.
Hey, I have lots of questions, but I don't know much about GitHub Actions as well. Can we take a step back and say, what is the problem GitHub Actions solve that customers or users cannot solve on their own easily? Let's start with that open question first.
Yeah, maybe I can briefly introduce how the GitHub Actions solve users' problems in CI/CD pipeline. So I believe we have been explained the backgrounds and also some feature requests from the community when we initially set up this repo, maybe 3 months ago, right? So I think the basic purpose is to automate the signing, verification, and also the installation of notation in CI/CD pipeline, and specifically for GitHub Actions. So you may know that GitHub Actions is a CI/CD pipeline product for GitHub users to automate their development and operation workflow. So it has its workflow file to allow users to add any steps or any actions to their pipeline. So for example, if they want to sign their container images in their CI/CD pipeline, they can simply use the notation actions from GitHub Marketplace and just call the available actions like this. Users don't need to write script and the native notation CLI commands in their CI/CD pipeline. They only need to call the available actions provided by notation.
Got it.
So
I think this helps.
It is to simplify the signing and verification experience in CI/CD pipeline, and specifically for GitHub Actions users.
Okay, so but those users could build it on their own as well. They could have written these actions on their own, but then we are solving the problem that they don't have to, not everybody has to write the actions again and again. We can write it once and people can use it many times. But then does it change our security boundary now to these GitHub actions, that now we have to make sure these GitHub actions are now inside our security boundary scope?
Sorry, I didn't get your point for securing the security boundary.
Yeah, I'm just thinking that now we will tell users that they can trust this GitHub action that we are pushing to marketplace. What if between us approving it and pushing it to marketplace, or it living in the marketplace, those GitHub actions are somehow changed? So my question is, now does our GitHub boundary or our security boundary extend to make sure these GitHub actions are released in a secure manner, they are not modified? And I'm just curious if that changes our security boundary.
I got you. I see Sajid's hands up.
Hey, yeah, that's actually a good point to call out. But what I would say is that the security boundary at that time actually changes to the security boundary of GitHub Actions, because other signing tools, cosign and things like that also kind of like execute on the Actions platform, right? And you can provide things like your deployment secrets and all that into the Actions platform. So I think it's good to call out that when we release the action, that the security boundary is kind of within that. But the plugin also ensures that the signing happens maybe remotely. So there's a mixed boundary there also. Shui, go ahead.
Yes, and it's also about the trade-off between the security and the convenience. If you don't support this kind of actions in the GitHub Actions, users will just do their own, and they will probably do wrong.
Yeah, no, I agree that each person writing their own sign action is way more error prone. So sorry, Samir, go ahead.
Yeah, I have one more question there. So again, I'm not an expert, not close to the code, but looking at these three actions, where do you configure the credentials for these three actions? That's my first question. And second question, let me ask it. For the verify, why is there a hard limit on verify not having a plugin of its own? Can verify also support a plugin?
I think, Pritesh, you might be able to answer that question as to why we never did a verify plugin, right?
We do have a verify plugin notation, not sure about actions.
I think
API exists, but do we have an example plugin?
Yes, even I wrote the one plugin which does support that example, which is still in PR because I didn't got time to work on it. But yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So I think, Samir, we can support a plugin. There's nothing stopping us. It's just a point in time thing, I guess.
Got it. I think from a signer perspective, like we were talking about the supported plugins for sign, we listed HashiCorp, Azure Key Vault, and HashiCorp. I think for Verify, signer plugin will be one of those things as well. So how much work that is to add the signer, or sorry, a plugin for Verify? Can somebody give a scope estimate for that?
Before we jump into work, Feynman, what's the scope of this issue? It is to start creating the repo, or where are we at right now?
No, actually, I think we already have the repo, and we finished the initial implementation for notation actions. The next step would be start the release process and also test process for other plugins. But at least right now, we have the initial implementation work completed. So we are discussing the release process for these GitHub repositories. And further requirements and also plugins can be added in the next iteration, and including the verification plugin. So I believe Samir also asked another question about the credential store and management in GitHub Actions, right?
Yeah, because there are two credentials here, right? The credentials to the plugin, the credentials to the registry. So I was wondering, how is that handled? I was hoping to see something in the code for the sign, two sets of credential helpers, one for the plugin, one for the registry. I didn't see any, so that's my query.
Okay, so that's a good question. So I can provide some findings regarding the GitHub how GitHub Actions handle the credentials, and I believe maybe Shui, Patrick can chime in if anything. So currently, GitHub Actions has its GitHub encrypt secrets, which is used to store the credentials for authenticating with the cloud-based Key Vault or any registries. So GitHub encrypt. I can share the links so you can understand the context about how GitHub Actions handle the credential in its workflow.
Yeah, that will help. Yeah, that will help. But I was just thinking it in the sign and verify options you listed, there must be a way to say, here are the credentials. I was hoping to see that. I didn't see that. That's my query. That in the GitHub action itself, why don't we have some code snippet in that sign and verify saying, go here to get the credential?
It's like notation login, right?
I was surprised by that.
For sign operation, we do notation login. Where's that performed? Like at minimum, like when we sign manually, we have to do notation login, or we have to set up a credential store, a credential provider. How are we doing that in GitHub Actions?
Yeah, that's another story. Actually, we can use, for example, Docker logging or other cloud-based CI tool or CI actions like Azure logging or other AWS logging. We can rely on that authentication method, since notation can read the registry credentials from the credential helper. So if we have the command executed like Docker logging in the GitHub Actions workflow, notation will be able to read the configuration, the credentials from the credential helper. I think Patrick can provide more inputs for the authentication part.
Yeah, for the authentication, in the ACR case, we are using Azure logging to log into the resources. That's it for now.
Patrick, if I may jump in, so you're saying basically the outside of these three actions, there is something else in the workflow earlier where
It should
somebody
be.
has to. Okay.
It should be. It means to be in the GitHub workflow. So only using these three GitHub actions is not enough. I would say it's not enough to complete the CI/CD pipeline. The workflow should have other configurations like secrets to save the credentials to authenticate from your registry or your KMS, something like that.
I got it. That was very useful because I was hoping to see all three things in this, each command. That helps. I'm not close to the code. Appreciate it. No more questions.
Yeah, so these three actions are a part of a whole GitHub Actions workflow, I would say. Yeah.
It's me just to chime in. Shiva provided a good example there, of this plugin working with Azure Key Vault and ACR. So we can take a look at that example. That's the way users has to do.
Yeah, actually, to be transparent, we don't put any cloud or vendor specific examples in that GitHub in the upstream GitHub Actions repo. So we put the cloud-based configurations and also the examples in another repo. So this is for vendor natural. So I think the example shared by Shui is this one. And I think this sample workflow uses the Azure login and the ACR login. I think this is also working for users if they have the AWS ECR login, I believe Pritesh shared. This is a little bit different from the cloud-based registries or the cloud-based products. But we can also use Docker login to authenticate with the registry.
I have a couple of questions around the parameters which we need to pass to sign and verify actions. Is this the right forum or should I just ping someone? Like, how do you want to tackle that?
Sorry, what's your question, Pritesh?
So, for example, like plugin URL and plugin checksum, are these both mandatory parameters? Let's say plugin checksum. Like, I have a couple of questions around individual parameters which you are passing to actions. For example, in sign, we are checking plugin checksum as a parameter.
Yeah, this is actually requires manually defined in the parameters like plugin URL and plugin checksum.
So it's like, is plugin checksum a mandatory parameter?
Yes, it is. So the user is downloading the plugin, right? They need to make sure the plugin checksum matches what they are downloading for security reason.
Yeah, it is mainly for security reasons, because it can happen that for example, the network crashed or other thing happens during the downloading. So verifying the checksum will ensure the integrity.
I mean, yes, it helps, but the upgrade becomes a problematic here. If they have to migrate, they'll have to get a new checksum from somewhere and paste it here. Like for any upgrade, any even minor upgrades to the plugin, customer will or users will have to update this, which basically means they won't adopt something new if it goes out for quite some time. And I'm assuming dependent won't help here because it's an external URL, so it has to be manually done every time. I think we can talk more about this later, but yeah, that's it. Like I will go through this GitHub Actions and probably ask more questions if I have more.
Yeah, please marketplace potential. And it would be super helpful if you can get your hands dirty on testing notation actions with AWS Signer plugins or any verification plugins. And as I mentioned, you're welcome to submit any other plugins and also the examples to the upstream notation actions.
Hey, Feeman, I have just one more question, maybe a product management question on this one. Like, do we have data
please.
on how many customers will use or prefer to use GitHub Actions versus, say, something else, some other CI/CD tool?
This is actually a good question. I am investigating how the GitHub Marketplace provides the download metrics for GitHub Actions provider. So currently, I think we don't have a certain answer for that, but I would expect the GitHub Marketplace provides a metric for the actions provider. So, you know, there are a lot of well-known actions landed there. So I believe GitHub or GitHub Marketplace might have that metrics. I'm not sure if Shui or anyone else has that knowledge.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think for the marketplace, also a good place that user that can find the different solutions. For example, if user search sign container images or some keywords, they may find that notation actions and will be a good solution for them, and then they will find out notation is actually a tooling under Notary project. It also helps to promote our solutions for different users. And as Feeman maybe explained that even we didn't provide this, some other users could write their own actions if they choose GitHub Actions as a pipeline, right? Because the notation is a tooling. Anyone can write scripts, right? So if we have some official plugin ready for them, it will be simplifying their experience. They just need to provide some input parameters, then that's done for their job. So it will also help this. Yeah.
Let me see if there's any further questions left in our chat box.
It seems, Samuel, you still have your hands up. Do you have other questions?
No, my bad. I never took it down.
Okay, no problem. I think the Feeman, maybe you can share our plan to when we publish this notation setup action, right? You can share our plan, and also we can collect the comments to see whether anything we needed to be done before the publishment.
Yeah. So our next step is to publish the notation actions to the marketplace for better visibility. So especially new users can search and find the notation from the marketplace. But due to the limitations of the GitHub Marketplace, we can only publish the single action to the marketplace. So currently, our GitHub Actions repos contains 3 actions. It's a multi-actions repository, so we can only pick one action to submit to the marketplace. So we prefer submitting the setup actions, the notation setup to marketplace. So and also tell users that they can still use notation sign and verify action from the GitHub Actions, even they are not showed or landed on the marketplace.
Sorry, I missed that. Why can't we land all three of them in the marketplace? Do we have to pay a fee for that? Is that what you were saying?
Yeah, actually, GitHub Marketplace has a limitation that the action providers can only submit a single action to their marketplace. Unless we are the official partners of the GitHub, like this one, they have a certified partner badge on their actions, on their apps. They can submit the multi actions, or if this is a official GitHub Marketplace application, they can submit multi actions. But we are the country. We are not an official partner of the GitHub Marketplace, so we can only submit single action to the marketplace. So the choice is that we currently choose to submit setup action, as this is a very fundamental action. Whatever users want to use sign or verify, they have to install notation with the notation setup action. So we plan to submit the setup action to GitHub Marketplace. As you can see that there are also other setup actions like setup Java, setup.NET, and lots of setup actions, which is used to install notation or install the CLI tool in their CI/CD pipeline.
Okay, thanks. I think my question was like, is there a path to get all three of them there, or how far away is the path to get all three there?
Currently, we cannot get all of three actions to the marketplace, since this is a limited policy in GitHub Marketplace. But it doesn't mean that notations, sign, and verify actions are not available to users. They are still available to users. And I think the setup action is a traffic portal or a traffic entry for users to find the notation, and then they can read, they can get other actions from the README. Does it make sense?
I understand now.
Yeah,
that's good.
Okay, so it's like that. So we have a notation setup action published in the marketplace. Once user click that actions, user will see a page for notation setup, right? And under that page, we will have a README, so user can find how to use notation to sign and verify, right? Something like that.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Okay, so if there's no more questions, I will stop my sharing. And I would hope that maybe Samir or Pritesh, you can help us to validate the notation GitHub actions with AWS Signer plugins or other plugins developed by your team. This would be super helpful for others who want to use with those plugins. And this GitHub actions is also extensible for any plugins or parameters. We can iterate that in the future.
Yeah. Feynman, could you share the timeline for when we will publish this notation setup actions? And I think for what we just discussed, Samuel mentioned for other verification plugin that we can maybe Samuel or Pritesh, you can create the issue on the GitHub notation actions repo, so that we can iterate the GitHub action and release it next time in next cycle. Yeah.
Yeah, actually, we are planning to release the first version of the GitHub Actions for notation on September 20, and we have been well tested with the Azure Keyboard plugin, and I think the fundamental capabilities is also mature since we integrated with the notation v1. It's a stable release. So after we release the first version, I think it will be submitted to the GitHub Marketplace, and we will have a review process by GitHub Marketplace team. after the review process completed, I think notation GitHub Actions will be published and available to all GitHub users. But we are not quite sure about the how long will the GitHub review during the review process. But we will start to submit the PR to release the first version V1 for GitHub Actions on September 20. That's our overall plan for notation GitHub Actions. So if you have any questions, please let us know. And you can also open issues in that repo, so we can continue to track and iterate on the next release.
Sure, I will give it a try tomorrow and check if it works with the AWS plugin.
Yeah, thank you, Pritesh.
Okay, I think I will take note that we plan to release the first notation setup action September 20, right? And Pritesh will also help to test the notation actions. I will take these two notes. Anything else related to GitHub Actions and Figma you want to share?
Nothing from my side.
Okay, thanks. Maybe I can share again. Let me find my window. Okay, so we have 20 minutes. So the next item is to triage other issues in the 1.1 milestone. So let me click this. Yeah, so currently I'm on the page of notation milestone 1.1. And under this milestone, we have some features that we are aligned, right? So the first is assign and verify arbitrary date. So for folks you don't know that actually we can prioritize the issues under the milestone. So if you mouse over certain issue, you can drag it up and down to prioritize it. So I already did some homework before the meeting. So for the features we aligned, I prioritize them. So the first one is sign and verify arbitrary data. The second one, and this one Pritesh is working on. The second one is sign local content and images before they are pushed to the registry. So this one is basically we are thinking to stabilize the experimental feature. So currently, Feynman and Patrick are all working on that. I think the next one should be the plugin installation and uninstallation. So after we complete the features above, we will continue to work on the plugin to improve the plugin experience. Then after that, we have several issues related to the trust policies. For example, the output of the cert list, new CLI commands for the trust policy management, and the policy initial command or out-of-box experience we want to consider. And also this one, cert list, I think this is also duplicated with this one. It's about the output of cert list. And also a small enhancement for the policy import command. So we have several issues for the trust policy and the trust store user experience. Okay, I forgot to mention this one is also related to the how we can add public certificates to the trust store. So actually, just now we showed, I think Feynman shows the verification example in the actions, right? So if we have some command to support that, so user don't need to put the file path for the store and the trust policy. Maybe we can have a better experience. For example, user can just input some parameters, then we can use the command under the thing to construct the policies, and the user can also maybe add a link to the certificate. Then this certificate will be added to a trust store that we can build for our users. So this is just some ideas for inspiring. So later, once we have a good user experience for the trust policy, we can also improve the pipeline experience as well. Then this one is actually Pritesh created for us to do the planning. So I think since we already align this feature priority, maybe we can close this one. Pritesh, if you have any comments.
Nope, I think we can close that.
Yeah, so we can do that later. So after that, all the issues, I think maybe around 20 more issues that we needed to triage to see whether we should include them in 1.1. But we can use this table to prioritize that, right? So because we aligned that we set the target date for releasing, so we can complete the issues we want to do as much as possible. But if at that time we cannot complete all of them, we can move them to the next milestone. But we need to prioritize them first. So today we have less than 15 minutes, so I'm not sure whether we can complete all the issues. But let's try. Let's give another 5 minutes for other two topics. Okay, let's spend 10 minutes for triaging. This issue is about, I think it's a bug about the error messages. So I think, yeah, Patrick, please.
Evie, for the first three issues, we already have 2 PRs regarding these 3 issues.
Okay.
They're in Notation Go and Notation CRI already.
Okay, thanks.
Shirley has already reviewed and approved the PR in Notation Go. So I'm kindly asking Pritesh to review the PR, and then we can continue to the Notation CLI PR for the 3 issues 699 to 701.
Pritesh, will that be okay for you to review this since the PR are already out? Okay.
Yeah, we'll take a look.
Thanks,
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, the next one, we don't need to take actions for the notation repo because this need to create a PR to update some issues that for the notation 1.0. So we have to correct those information in 1.1 release. So this is for the homebrew. We just use this issue to track. So as I believe this should be included in 1.1, right?
What's the issue here?
It's about invalid git commit that Shiwei found. You see the git commit for the 1.0 after use homebrew, it shows homebrew. So actually we expect the git commit.
Oh, okay.
Shiwei, you can comment. I think this the current one is not the best practice, right?
Yes, it should show the git commit in a commit field, or it's just not show, but it's not good to show homebrew in the git commit.
Yeah.
I agree there. Also, quick question on version, why there's plus homebrew? Is this a common pattern?
You mean the version?
Yeah.
The plus is just the build metadata, so it does not affect the version. So version 1.1 plus blah 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 is still version 1.00. Yeah. So plus is just build metadata and can be ignored.
Yes, but is this a common thing with homebrew? Because as far as I remember, I have seen a couple of items which don't have homebrew at the end, even though installed with brew.
Auras has the same thing actually. So if you see the auras built by homebrew, it will have the plus homebrew. The reason on this one is that the binary in our release page is different from the binary from the homebrew. So that's why we need to differentiate them.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah, so this is for the first one, since we have V1 for homebrew, so we needed to 1.1, we needed to update this. But this will be a PR under the homebrew repository. So next one is about print manifest as part of the debug options. This one is created by Toddy. So the ask here is to, when using debug flag, notation can print the manifest and the digest. So this is to enhance the troubleshooting. Yeah, basically after each HTTP request, print the payload and the payload digest. So what do you think actually for the triage, we will see whether this is valuable. We can first tentatively mark it into certain milestones, and after we work through all the issues, we can start prioritization. Then we will know which one are more important, which one are not. Then we can, based on the time we have, so that we can just complete the most important one. So if you think this is valuable for to be included in 1.1, we can keep the milestone. Then later we can prioritize all the issues together.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I want to go back to number 2 on the list here. If you go scroll up, the way it is worded, the number 2 on the list here, on the very top, about local or signing before pushing an artifact.
Oh, this
is
one.
it only? Yeah, is it only for container images, or it will also work for other artifacts like SBOMs or CV scan results? Or I'm curious.
I think yeah, for SBOM or other vulnerability reports, we can maybe the first one can answer that.
No, I think that.
But
Go ahead. Go ahead, Pratish.
As BOM still end up in OCR registries, right? So they have to be signed differently. Signing arbitrary data is, which means it's data which might not end up in the registry. There is no manifest concept.
Yeah, I
So
think we should clarify that. So that's a good point, Pratish. But you're saying number one is that we have no guarantee that what we are signing goes into a registry. It can be stored somewhere else, like wherever. Whereas number two is saying sign any OCI artifact before it is pushed to a registry. So can we rename number two to say that? Or if that's not the plan, then let's talk about it.
So you mean for the let me think about for the number two, if we have a spawn, right? But number two, the previously we want to focus on the container images. That's meaning for our experimental feature, right? The container images are in the OCI layout format. So
which is fine. I just want to be very clear that which is fine, Feynman. I think I want to. Oh, sorry. I want to be clear that this is only for container images and nothing else. I want to be. That's why I wanted to check the wording.
Yes, container. So the title is correct. Local container images, not about spawn.
And also local container images in the OCI artifact format, not the Docker format, right? We want to be clear there as well.
Yeah. For this issue, the proposal I proposed is to use the Docker plugin, but after discussion, that we think that we should use we should stabilize our experimental feature about OCI layout. So, yeah. So that is so this is all about the OCI layout.
Okay, and I think again we will need to have some data here to say this is the right prioritization, that most of the images are pushed with the OCI layout or the Docker layout. I don't know one or the other. You are more of a registry expert than I am. But it will be good to have some context. Why are we prioritizing OCI layout versus the Docker layout based on some data?
Yeah, Sajid has a comment in the chat.
Oh, so yeah, I think he's giving that most times it is the Docker layout. So this feature will not solve the common use case then.
Yeah, but we need to figure out the scenario that if the user, for example, user don't build OCI layout first, how this can fit into their currently workflow to solve this problem. I mean, to sign the images before pushing. So the scenarios needed to be finalized, and I think that is the currently Feynman is working on. And previously, my proposal is to use the Docker plugin, but it seems that it will take a long time to complete it. Okay. So in the so maybe in the future there is a ask about this using Docker plugin to generate some descriptor and assign the descriptor. Then we probably can have another feature to address this. But for the 1.1, we are focusing on how the OCI layout can fit into this the current Docker build flow.
Yeah, I think they're two separate things, right? So forget whether we do it as part of a Docker plugin or not. I think we are saying which layout should we use. What I'm hearing from Sajay is the more common layout is the Docker layout, but we'll go ahead with the OCI layout for this issue.
Yeah. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, currently it's Docker layout, but in the future it's OCI layout. If you use Docker desktop, you will find that there's a beta feature called use containerd as the engine. If you use the containerd as the engine, then the layout, the default layout is the OCR layout.
Yeah, but again, what's the common one right there? I think you brought up a container D layout, which is also the OCR layout, but I think what I'm hearing from Sajay is the common is the Docker layout, which this will not cover, which is fine. I just wanted to be very clear what we are doing first.
Yeah, we focus on the OCR layout for 1.1, and the proposal actually in this issue initially is to address the Docker layout, but in that case we needed to build a Docker plugin, but this will take a long time to complete. So we can so for this proposal, maybe in the future we have this ask, then we can come back and see whether we need to work with the Docker community to build the Docker plugin. But in the future, as Shui mentioned, the container D currently is already a beta feature in the Docker. So in the future, maybe with the more adoption of container D as the engine, then the OCR layout becomes more popular. It could be, yeah.
Okay, thanks. Okay, no more questions. I think we're done on this topic then.
Yeah, I think we almost reach our time, so I think we can continue to charge next time. But it's better that offline, maybe Samuel or Pradesh, you can take a look at this milestone. You can also prioritize, as I showed you. You can drag up and down to prioritize these issues. Then we can also review it offline before the meeting. One thing I want to highlight is that next week, there will be the KubeCon China starting from 26. So I think the maintainers in China cannot join the Monday meeting due to the time difference. So we will join the KubeCon China, and we also have two topics. One from Feynman, work with the Kibana community to demo the Kibana and the Notary project integration. Another one is from me, work with the Hubble maintainer to demo the Notary project ORAS and the Hubble, how to secure the supply chain in the CI/CD. So I also added the link here. If you are interested, you can feel free to click and view the details. And also feel free to broadcast this, because this is also a good thing for the Notary project community.
Yeah, wonderful. Thank you. This is great.
Yeah, thanks, Samuel. Yeah, so we 1 minute over time. So let's stop here. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you.
have a nice time. Bye-bye.
Yes. Bye.
Bye.
All right, thank you.